Welcome to Crimson Clues, where shadows hide secrets and silence reveals the truth. Every story is a puzzle, and every clue takes you closer to the answer. Subscribe now, join the hunt, and let the mystery begin. Chapter 1. Arrival at Dunraven Manor. Whodunit howled across. St. Kilda's rock, a desolate speck of Scottish earth, thrust defiantly into Atlantic as if daring the sea to claim it. It was the autumn of 1932, and a storm brewed on the horizon. It's dark. Clouds rolling in like an advancing army. Dunraven Manor stood atop Iceland's cliffs, a sprawling, Victorian edifice of Gothic spires and ivy-clad stone, its silhouette stark against the bruised sky. Gargoyles leered from the eaves, their granite eyes glinting wetly in the mist, while the grounds once manicured into submission now sprawled wild, a tangle of overgrown hedges and skeletal trees, clawing at the fog. The isolation was palpable, a heavy shroud that pressed against the soul, and within it the manor waited, grand, yet ferreting its secrets, whispering through creak of its ancient bones. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective of impeccable mustache and unparalleled mind, stepped from the swaying motorboat onto the rocky shore, his spattered leather shoes clicking with disapproval against the damp stone. He adjusted his overcoat against the wind's insolence and cast a discerning eye toward the manor above. He had been summoned by Lord Archibald Dunraven, a reclusive millionaire whose passion for rare artifacts rivaled Poirot and Lt. Unc and G.T.'s own love of order. The invitation had promised the unveiling of a Mesopotamian relic, a treasure of such antiquity and value that it warranted the presence of a man of Poirot and Lt. Unc and G.T.'s distinction. Yet as he ascended the winding path, the air thick with salt and unease, Poirot sensed that this weekend would demand more of him than mere admiration at the manor's great oak doors. Mr. Higgins, the butler, awaited, a tall, stoop-shouldered figure whose lined face bore the weight of years in service. His black suit was immaculate, his manner as rigid as the iron-knocker. He grasped to announce the new arrival. Mesha Poirot, he intoned, his voice a low rumble. Lord Dunraven bids you welcome. The others have already arrived. With a creak that echoed through Thekavernus Hall, the doors swung inward, revealing a world of shadowed opulence. The entrance hall was a study in grandeur, velvet drapes and deep crimson framed tall windows, their panes rattling under the storm's assault. A marble fireplace roared, casting flickering light across a chandelier that glittered like a constellation trapped in crystal portraits. Offstern Dunraven ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes tracking Poirot as he handed his hat and cane to the silent Mary, a maid whose youthful face flickered with nervous curiosity. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and wax, yet beneath it lingered something colder, an undercurrent of tension that Poirot and Lt. Unc and G.T.'s keen senses could not ignore. Lord Archibald Dunraven emerged from the drawing room, a figure of imposing presence despite the slight stoop of age. His silver hair gleamed under the gas lamps, and his sharp blue eyes carried the intensity of a man accustomed to command. Monsieur Poirot, he exclaimed, his voice rich with a Scots burr, I am honored you accepted my invitation. Come meet my guests. This relic shall be a triumph for us all. His enthusiasm was genuine, yet Poirot noted the faintest tremor in his hand as he gestured toward the room beyond. Within the drawing room, the assembled company turned as one, their faces a gallery of curiosity, weariness, and veiled intent. Lady Eleanor Dunraven stood by the fireplace, a vision of icy beauty in a gown of midnight silk. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, but her green eyes held no warmth as they met Poirot and its balmy husband's latest obsession. She said coolly, her tone slicing through the crackle of the fire, I trust you'll find it worth the journey. The words were polite, yet they carried the sting of a woman long resigned to a loveless cage beside her. Captain James Sinclair rose from an armchair, his military bearing undimmed by retirement. His gray mustache bristled as he offered a firm handshake, though his dark eyes flickered with a restlessness Poirot found intriguing. Archibald and I go back to the war. he said gruffly. "Good to see a man of your reputation join us." His grip was strong, but Pooh sensed a shadow beneath the soldier's stern facade. Next, Dr. Alistair Campbell, a lean man with a physician's steady hands, or so they seemed at first. Glance, and the scholar's thoughtful brow inclined his head in greeting. As he adjusted his spectacles, Poirot noticed a slight tremor in his fingers and a faint, almost imperceptible scent of something medicinal, like morphine, wafted briefly in the air. Curious, Poirot thought, but not yet significant of pleasure. "Monsieur Poirot, Campbell," murmured his voice calm as still water. "Lord Dunraven speaks highly of your mind. I suspect we and Lt. Unc G. to they'll have much to discuss." His spectacles caught the light masking his eyesight. Poirot marked the quiet confidence of a man at ease with secrets. Miss Clara Fairfax, a young woman with bright hazel eyes and a notebook clutched like a shield, approached with a smile that belied her intensity. "The famous Hercule Poirot," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with excitement. "I'm here to write about the relic for the Antiquarian Review. What a story this will be!" Her eagerness was disarming, but Poirot wondered what depths her curiosity might plumb. Mr. Charles Worthington, a dealer in rare artifacts, exuded charm as he extended a manicured hand. His tailored suit and silver cufflinks bespoke wealth, yet his smile was too practiced. "A fellow connoisseur, I presume," he said smoothly. "The relic is extraordinary. I'd wager it's worth more than this manor itself." Beside him, Mrs. Beatrice Worthington fidgeted with her pearls, her pale face taut with uneasy. "It's quite overwhelming," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind's wail. These servants hovered at the edges. Mrs. McTavish, the cook, a stout woman with flour-dusted hands, nodded curtly from the doorway. Old Tom, the groundskeeper, lingered near the hall, his weather edifice half hidden beneath a cap, his eyes darting to the storm. Beyond, the household was complete, a tableau of disparate lives, drawn together by Lord Dunraven's prize. Lord Dunraven spoke animatedly of the relic's provenance, his words punctuated by the clatter of silver and the storm's growing fury. Lady Elenina sat silent, her gaze fixed on some distant point. Captain Sinclair's curt reply hinted at old wounds. Dr. Campbell listened with polite detachment, while Miss Fairfax's questions grew sharper, probing at edges. Poirot noted with interest Mr. Worthington's flattery rang hollow on. Mrs. Beatrice shrank further into herself, her fork trembling as the clock struck 9. The storm reached a crescendo, its winds shrieking through the chimneys like a banshee's cry. Pover, observant, watched the faces around him, the little gray cells of his mind already stirring. Could not yet name the disk that gnawed at him, but he knew it was there, a thread of malice woven into the fabric of this night. Dunraven Manor, with its hidden passages and watchful shadows, held its breath, poised for the tragedy that would soon unfold, and Hercule, with his unerring instinct for the truth, would be ready. Chapter 2: The Unveiling. The storm raged unabated as night fell on Dunraven Manor, with powerful gusts slamming themselves against the ivy-clad stone like a restless specter within the drawing-room. A refuge of flickering firelight and velvet shadows, the air hummed with anticipation. The guests gathered around a pedestal covered in crimson, their silhouettes stark against the brightness of the marble hearth. Lord Archibald Dunraven strode into the circle of light, his silver hair catching the chandelier's brilliance. His Scots burst a low growl as he spoke. "Tonight, we stand on the threshold of history." With a rapid motion, he exposed a small stone tablet with ancient inscriptions whispering secrets from a long time ago. A wave of wonder swept through the crowd. Miss Clara Fairfax, the young journalist, took a step forward, her hazel eyes wide with astonishment. She breathed deeply and clutched her notebook securely, her adoration evident despite a hint of ambition. Mr. Charles Worthington, the relic dealer's polished charm, couldn't hide a glimmer of greed. He mumbled, "The value of this item is incalculable." Mrs. Beatrice Worthington twisted her pearls, her frightened gaze darting about as if the darkness might swallow her whole, while Captain James Sinclair remained hard beside the fireplace, his military posture uncompromising. "Impressive work, Archibald." His black gaze lingered on the tablet, perhaps reflecting animosity against Dr. Alistair Campbell. The surgeon adjusted his spectacles with a serenity that appeared almost too perfect, a Sumerian marvel, he noted. His voice measured a significant fine certainly, but his stillness hinted at guarded depths. Lady Elena Dunraven sat in a high-backed chair and surveyed the situation with frigid detachment. "Another bauble to clutter the shelves," she commented forcefully, flickering her emerald eyes to her husband. "I hope it justifies the fuss." The barb hung in the air, highlighting the divide between them. All Poirot stood quietly at the room's edge, his form dwarfed by the grandeur, but he exuded quiet authority. His acute eyes catalogued each reaction with precise accuracy. Lord Archibald's passion was a beacon, but one that may attract harm. Miss Fairfax's zeal looked too bright. Mr. Worthington's curiosity is too calculated. Captain Sinclair's nod was too reserved. Dr. Campbell's calm was a cover. Lady Eleanor's scorn a weapon, the servants as the guests dispersed to inspect the artifact. Mr. Higgins, Mrs. McTavish, Mary, the shy maid, and old Tom, the grizzled groundskeeper, watched silently. Poirot strolled among them, his presence subtle yet unavoidable. He paused near Miss Fairfax, who scribbled frantically. "You are most industrious, mademoiselle," he remarked gently, his voice tinged with curiosity. "This relic holds a particular fascination for you." "No," she looked up with a flush on her cheeks, "a journalist's fantasy." Monsieur Poirot's smile was bright, but Poirot saw darkness beneath it, his mustache twitching faintly. "Pursuing stories can lead to treacherous seas." She nodded and returned to her notes, her smile wavering. Poirot moved his focus to Mr. Worthington, who was in a hushed conversation with Lord Archibald. The dealer suggested that a work like this may safeguard your legacy, but Lord Archibald refused to sell. Charles, history is designed to endure. Mr. Worthington's charm faded as he received a stinging rebuke. The storm swelled, piercing the manor's walls as visitors settled in with brandy. Poirot saw Lady Eleanor's lingering glance at Captain Sinclair filled with unspoken meaning, and the captain's hard-jawed avoidance of it. Dr. Campbell discussed the origins of the relic with Poirot. Despite his vast knowledge, he maintained a guarded demeanor. Poirot asked if this was a shared interest with Archibald, and Campbell smiled faintly. Poirot sensed a thread to tug. Later, dinner was served in the dining hall, where a long oak table gleamed beneath another chandelier, its candles trembling. The meal was lavish, with roast pheasant. His enthusiasm clashed with Lady Elena's silence and Captain Sinclair's stern responses. Miss Fairfax's queries intensified Mr. Worthington's flattery, and Mrs. Beatrice shrunk further within herself as the clock struck 10. Lord Archibald rose, his face pallid, but firm. The storm demanded repose, and he said good night with a tired voice. The visitors drifted away with murmurs, their voices absorbed by the manor's deep depths. Poirot maintained his little form, framed by the fading embers. While tracking the relic's faint shine, a surprising stir caught his attention. Mrs. Beatrice Worthington retreated to the library, her face pale and dreadful. The image caused a ripple in his placid thoughts. There was something missing in this huge house that drew his attention. As he went toward his chamber, the storm's scream echoed his growing unease. Chapter 3. The Storm and the Crime. The storm hit St. Kilda's Rock with violence, shaking Dunraven Manor to its core. The wind ripped through the ancient windows, rattling them in. The sea roared like a beast clawing at the cliffs with white-fanged waves, sending tendrils of cold creeping into the grand old house beyond the walls. The air was thick with the unspoken tensions of the evening. The manor, a sentinel of Victorian splendor, stood resolute yet fragile, as if it sensed the shadow creeping closer through the gale in the dim sanctuary of his study. Lord Archibald Dunraven sat alone, with the flickering gaslight casting dark shadows on his lined face. The carved surface of the Mesopotamian relic on his desk reflected the night's events with a menacing calm. He grabbed for the decanter, the crystal clinking slightly. He poured a measure of brandy, the amber liquid shaking in his unsteady grip. He took a sip, but it didn't alleviate the pressure on him. The way he felt was not only from the storm, but also from something deeper. Outside, the wind howled, adding to his dread. A shadow glided outside the study door. Its presence obscured by the storm's unrelenting den, the stranger entered quietly, like a cat pursuing its prey. "What do you want at this hour?" Lord Dunraven demanded, his voice sharp with suspicion, as he looked up. The intruder stepped closer, their features lost in the gloom. "We must speak," they said, taut with intent. Lord Dunraven rose, gripping the desk's edge. The figure advanced and produced a coarse rope from beneath their cloak. Lord Dunraven's cry was swallowed by the storm as the rope tightened around his throat, his hands flailing. Mary, the young maid, tossed restlessly beneath her thin blanket. The storm's violence was enough to upset anyone, but a deeper disquiet kept her awake. A sense of foreboding clung to the manor, like the ivy on the stones. She sat up, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and resolved to check on the household. As she padded through the dimly lit corridors, a sliver of light beneath the study door caught her eye. She hesitated and knocked softly, but the silence persisted. A chill prickled her spine, and she pushed the door open with a trembling hand, sighing. Poirot entered the room with a commanding presence, absorbing every detail, including Lord Dunraven's lifeless form, the coarse rope with its nautical texture, and the serene relic amidst the horror. The window was locked with a rusted latch, and the door bore no signs of forced entry, leading Poirot to believe the killer had entered with permission. Captain James Sinclair's face was stone, and his fists were clenched as if ready to fight an unseen foe. Dr. Alistair Campbell went forward, urging action, but Poirot's voice stopped him. "Do not touch anything, Doctor," he warned forcefully. "This is now a crime scene." Mr. Charles Worthington trembled, and Mrs. Beatrice clung to his arm, her breathing shallow and ragged. Miss Clara Fairfax clutched her notepad, her journalistic curiosity warring with her terror of Mr. Higgins. The butler's equanimity was shaken by the spectacle in front of him. So he turned to secure Mr. Higgins. "No one leaves until we contact the authorities." The butler faltered during the storm. "Mr. Poirot, if the phone line goes down and we are trapped, we must take action." Poirot responded, "The murderer is among us." A terrible quiet descended, broken only by the wind's unrelenting howling. Poirot crouched alongside the dead, his gloved fingers hovering near the rope. The roughness and subtle aroma of salt water and tar indicated its origin. He mumbled, "This rope is not of the household, but comes from the sea, the boathouse." Dr. Campbell, gazing over his shoulder, observed, "The marks suggest a fierce struggle." And he did not go quietly. Poirot examined the scattered desk documents, some crumpled in rage and a half-written message in Lord Dunraven's hand. He realized he couldn't ignore what he had uncovered and that the truth must be revealed. The phrase ended abruptly, leaving one to wonder what truth he had discovered. Poirot wondered whether it was his death warrant. A quiet gasp caught his attention. Miss Fairfax hesitated at the entrance, pale and wide-eyed. "Monsieur Poirot," she muttered, "is it truly murder?" "It appears so, mademoiselle," he said calmly. "But we must wait for the facts to speak." She gave a nervous nod. "I was in the garden earlier despite the storm. I thought I saw someone near the boathouse, a shadow, but it was too dark." Poirot's attention grew as he asked, "Could you name the person you saw?" "No," she explained. "I thought it might be old Tom checking the boats, but now mercy, mademoiselle, that is most valuable." The boathouse was linked to the rope, and a thread was forming. He led her to the drawing room, where the others waited in tense silence. Lady Eleanor sat apart, her expression unreadable. Captain Sinclair paced like a caged lion, Dr. Campbell spoke softly to Mr. Worthington, who appeared to be on the verge of collapse. Mrs. Beatrice, accompanied by Mary Poirot, informed them that a serious crime had occurred. She asked for their cooperation and asked them to return to their rooms and refrain from discussing it until the storm passed. The murmurs were followed by heavy footsteps. Poirot noticed Tom's worried expression and designated him for inquiry. Poirot lingered in the study. The door shut against the murmurs of the household. Beyond the room lay still a grim stage where death had played its part. The air was heavy with the mingled scents of brandy and the sea's faint briny echo. He bent once more beside the body, his sharp eyes tracing the rope's rough coils, its texture so at odds with the study's polished elegance. A single strand fine as a spider's thread dangled from the desk's corner, a mute clue to the violin. The mystery of the rope, boathouse, and unsolved figure in the garden remained unsolved. Hercule stepped to the door, the soft click of its closing lost in the wind symphony of the night's dark drama. Within Dunraven Manor, a subtler storm was brewing. Woven of secrets and suspicion, with the truth hidden coiled, the fourth chapter of the investigation opens with a storm battering St. Kilda's Rock, as morning broke through the manor's heavy drapes. An oppressive quiet fell over the drawing-room. The assembled guests' faces were furrowed with apprehension. Hercule Poirot remained calmly beside the hearth, his gaze bouncing between Lady Eleanor's poise and Captain Sinclair's tight posture, Dr. Campbell's calm demeanor, and Miss Fairfax's trembling fingers were a study in hidden truths. The crime that bound them here loomed unspoken, its weight palpable in the air. Poirot stepped forward, his voice a measured thread cutting through the tension. "We are trapped by both storm and sin, and I will uncover the truth through your words. Let us begin, as the devil hides in the details." Lady Eleanor Dunraven reclined in a high-backed chair by the fire, her black silk gown highlighting her auburn hair pinned with austere perfection. Madame Poirot spoke softly but probingly, asking if she had retired early the night before due to a headache. "After dinner, I left the dining area due to exhaustion from the wine and endless discussion. I went to my room, closed the door, and remained there. The storm muffled out everything else, and her words served as a screen against intrusion. No footsteps or cries could be heard from the study." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching faintly. She replied with a firm voice. The wind was a banshee. Miss Poirot maintained a calm demeanor, but there was a hint of relief or calculation in her look. He speculated that their marriage may not have been filled with deep affection. Her lips became tighter, an arrangement nothing more Archibald had his. "Relics and charities, I had my solitude his death. Frees me perhaps, but little else." Changes. Poirot noticed her contemptuous tone, and responded with a small bow and a step back. "Cold ambition, inheritance perhaps." Poirot approached Captain James Sinclair, who stood by the window with his hands clasped behind him, staring into the storm. "Captain," says Poirot, "you were in the library last night, and all tell me of your time there." Sinclair, tired from dinner, took a book, Campaigns of the Great War, and settled in for respite from the relic babble. He remained silent till Mary screamed. "The study is near," Poirot remarked. "Have you heard anything?" "Nothing?" Sinclair clenched his jaw. The storm boomed like cannon fire, and his fingers flexed, causing a tiny tremor. Poirot did not miss your friendship with Lord Dunraven, which had cooled, perhaps, Sinclair's gaze. "We survived the trenches together, but he'd changed, grown smug, clutching that relic like a trophy. We'd clashed before old scores, buried a spark of temper flared quickly. Check your watch often, Captain. What keeps you restless?" Sinclair's disquiet was evident as he returned his gaze to the window. "As a soldier, timing is crucial in wartime." Mercy Pooh muttered debts or a grudge strands to explore before crossing to Dr. Alistair Campbell reclining by the fireside, his spectacles glinting and hands folded with calm assurance. Dr. Poirot replied, You were in your room preparing for bed. Campbell nodded steadily after supper. I retired fatigued from travel and Mrs. Worthington's anxiety. I read a diary before turning in the storm, which kept me awake till the scream. His tone was smooth and precise. Tell me, Doctor. Poirot pushed his gray eyes keen. How well did you know Lord Dunraven? You worked closely on his charity. Naomi Campbell tightened his hands on his knees and smiled fixedly. He responded with a smooth voice and flickering eyes, as if guarding a secret. His left hand absently rubbed his forearm, a gesture that Poirot noticed but did not yet understand the noble cause. Poirot tilted his head, acknowledging that such activities might bring pressure. Poirot detected a slight aroma of something medicinal, possibly laudanum, but disregarded it as a physician's natural aura. Campbell adjusted his spectacles and maintained a steady tone. Arcold's loss is a tragedy, he remarked with sincerity and tension. Poirot couldn't dismiss the doctor's composure, but questioned what lay beneath. The marks tell me, he continued. Campbell's methodical strangling was clear as day. The rope was cut deep and tightly tied, causing bruises on his hands. Death came quickly, but not instantly. His statements were distant, yet a shadow covered his face. You shared a close friend's interest in antiques. Campbell's lips thinned as he valued my advice on his collection. His loss stings professionally, but Poirot sensed restraint and your health. Campbell's hands tightened briefly, possibly due to shrapnel from the war. My leg flares, but I manage. Poirot pressed, smelling the medicinal whiff again. Campbell's composure wavered. I'm not a slave to it, he said defensively. Poirot stated that moving back from polished embezzlement or something deeper. Pooh switched his glance to Miss Clara. Era Fairfax sat on the sofa, holding her notebook, her hazel eyes flickering frantically. Mademoiselle, he said kindly. You were in the garden, a bold move in such weather. I needed air after dinner, but the relic talk choked me. I lingered near the terrace and saw nothing till I returned and heard about him. Poirot's voice quavered as she asked, What struck you that evening? Lady Eleanor paused and scarcely glanced at the relic. Mr. Worthington lingered over it. Arcold was disturbed, muttering about paperwork. She tightened her grip on the notebook as you chatted with him alone. Her cheeks flushed briefly before dinner when he teased my last article about embellishing his collection. I laughed, but he was serious. Later, in the library, her breath hitched as she went for a book. Someone grabbed her, and they fled. I didn't see who it was, but I screamed for mercy. Poirot expressed dire ambition, fear of secrets, and teetered next. Poirot noticed Mr. Charles Worthington pacing by the fireplace, sweating despite the chill. After supper, Worthington nodded jerkily and asked whether I was in the billiard room alone. I played a few frames and needed a break. The storm muted everything until a high-pitched scream, indicating your desire for the artifact. Poirot saw that Lord Dunraven refused to sell, citing it as a heritage. Despite this, Worthington's smile wavered and his eyes darted mercilessly. Poirot said desperation was a reason to watch. Poirot then approached Mrs. Beatrice. Worthington twisting her pearls, tears in her eyes, Madame, he said kindly. You were knitting here. Yes, she whispered by the fire. The storm scared me. I stayed till the scream. Your grief, it runs deeper. She dabbed her eyes. This place Charles pulled me here, and I despise it. Her hands fluttered in compassion. Poirot spoke a frail falsehood, maybe an affair finally. Poirot addressed the servants by the door, Mr. Higgins. Pale responded, I was in the pantry polishing silver with Mrs. McTavish and Mary. The cook nodded, Mary trembled. And the groundskeeper mentioned seeing a shadow by the boathouse, but couldn't identify who it was. Mary, Poirot replied, his mind agitated. Poirot retreated to the study, the silence surrounding him like a shroud dot. The desk was crowded with papers, and the air smelled faintly of laudanum. He stood immobile, his thoughts processing the day's events with Lady Eleanor's veiled detachment. Sinclair's suppressed fire, Campbell's calculated calm, Fairfax's weak nerves, Worthington's strained desperation, and the servant's hushed dread hinted at a truth just beyond reach. The storm raged outside, mirroring the peril hiding behind the walls. Poirot's stare sharpened as he turned toward the door, convinced that the killer was there and that the next move would be his own. Chapter 5 discusses secrets and suspicions. The storm shook Dunraven Manor, sending wails through the night like a herald of doom. Hercule Poirot stood immobile in his study, the keen stare sliced through the dimness, where shadows clung to the walls like silent accomplices. The air was heavy with the smell of charred embers and untold secrets, dragging his precise mind into the web of the evening's dark enigma. His piercing eyes, like a falcon's, scoured the room, missing nothing. The desk reflected Lord Dunraven's chaotic final moments. Scattered papers, a pen was abandoned mid-thought, and a half-written letter read, "I cannot ignore what I have discovered. The truth must." Poirot's attention was drawn to the fireplace, where a faint wisp of ash danced in the draught, a detail he had previously noted but hadn't fully explored. He kneeled by the hearth and took up a poker with gloved hands. His motions were precise and meticulous, sifting through the charred remains among the ashes. He closed his fingers over a burned scrap of paper, revealing a few legible words. "Your betrayal will not stand." Poirot's mustache twitched as he held the piece to the light, his mind filled with possibilities. The ink was bold and the handwriting was sharp with rage, a message of retribution for a betrayal that lost Lord Dunraven his life. It was unclear who wrote or acted on these lines. Poirot slipped the fragment into his pocket, a crucial clue with ambiguous meaning. As he rose, the door creaked open, revealing Mr. Higgins, the butler. His face was pale and drawn, and his hands clasped nervously before him. "Monsieur Poirot," he said faintly, "I thought you might need assistance." Poirot watched Higgins with a steady stare and a courteous yet forceful tone. He insisted that the room remain undisturbed, as every detail is a thread in the tapestry of murder. He paused, noticing the butler's uncertainty. "You are disturbed." Monamy asked Higgins if he had anything to add. Higgins looked to the fireplace before returning to Poirot. Lord Dunraven informed me in the pantry that he planned to make big revisions to his will. When he called them, he appeared disturbed, as if carrying a heavy burden. Poirot's eyes narrowed with curiosity, indicating major alterations. Did he elaborate? "No, sir." Higgins responded with a shake of his head, muttering about trust and unpaid debts. Poirot's mind raced with the possibility of a betrayal. "You have done well to tell me this. Now please ensure the others remain in their quarters." Higgins withdrew, leaving Poirot to his thoughts. Lord Dunraven returned to his desk, the unfinished note and burned fragment aligning like stars in a constellation of suspicion. He couldn't ignore the betrayal, which hinted at an unknown motive. A soft knock interrupted his reverie. Clara Fairfax stood at the entrance, her youthful face pale beneath a waterfall of dark hair, and her hazel eyes shining with a mixture of fear and fascination. She held her shawl firmly, hoping it would protect her from the night's terrors. "Monsieur Poirot," she continued, her voice trembling, "I couldn't sleep because of the storm and what I saw near the boathouse. It haunts me." Poirot invited Mademoiselle to share her sighting in the garden before dinner. "The storm was brewing, but I needed air. I saw a figure moving near the boathouse, furtive as if they didn't want to be seen. I thought it was old Tom securing the boats, but the darkness and wind blurred everything. But we must not leap ahead of the facts. Your observation is a gift to this investigation. Did you see their face?" "No," she conceded, her shoulders dropping as the storm swept them up. "You have done well," Poirot soothed her. "Return to your room and rest if you can. The truth will not elude us." Poirot sat at the desk, the charred fragment and half-written note spread before him. The boathouse was linked to the rope, now to a shadowy figure. Higgins' revelation of the will hinted at shifting fortunes and broken trust. His thoughts turned to Charity. Lord Dunraven championed a cause with Dr. Campbell and had the master of Dunraven. The manor discovered discrepancies in its funds and a betrayal by a trusted individual. Despite the fact that the room was sealed with a rope from the boathouse, the picture remained veiled, revealing secrets and suspicions. Poirot paused at the threshold, the storm's rage a distant echo to the tumult within his mind. The manor's corridors loomed ahead, a labyrinth of whispers and half-truths awaiting his scrutiny. With a measured step, he ventured forth, certain that the night held more to reveal. Chapter 6. The Attack. The storm's wrath fell upon St. Kilda's Rock with uncompromising violence, tearing at Dunraven Manor as if the elements desired retribution on the ancient edifice. The lonely estate was shrouded in darkness, punctuated only by the wind's lament, which seemed to reflect the unease within its walls. Hercule Poirot went to his chamber, but couldn't fall asleep. His thoughts was restless and focused on the day's shadows. The corridors riddled with untold secrets and malice. Miss Clara Fairfax paces her room. Her motions match the tempest. The storm's howl rattled her bones and reminded her of a phantom she had seen near the boathouse. Despite being swallowed by the upheaval, the recollection stuck to her like a shiver. She couldn't get over what she had genuinely seen. The question haunted her, prompting her to leave her chamber. She hugged her shawl close and stepped into the corridor, shivering. She made her way to the library, hoping that silent pages would calm her mind. The silence at the manor seemed heavy with the weight of unseen eyes, rather than providing calm. As she downed the huge staircase, the gas lanterns flickered faintly, creating lengthy shadows on the walls. Portraits of stern Dunraven ancestors saw her passing. Their painted eyes conveyed silent judgment, adding to the impression of solitude on the stormy island. The library door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light. Shining into the hall, Miss Fairfax pushed. It opened and stepped inside the scent of ancient leather and polished wood surrounding her like a familiar embrace. The room was dark, with oak-paneled walls and rows of leather-bound books stretching to the ceiling. A mahogany desk sat in one corner, strewn with papers. A bookshelf nearby was misaligned, as if guarding a secret. The gas lamps cast a feeble glow, their flames trembling against the distant roar of the storm, now muffled by the thick walls. She moved toward the shelves, brushing her fingers against the spines of the books. Before she could react, a shadow slid between the shelves, and a figure emerged from the darkness, hands violently grasping her arm. The terror surged through her as she twisted away, but the grip tightened, yanking her backward toward the desk. She gasped, clawing at her assailant, screamed, and shattered the library silence. The figure dragged her, their strength unyielding, but in a desperate surge, she kicked out, striking something solid. Her attacker's hold faltered just enough for her to wrench free, causing her to stumble. Poirot entered the room first, followed by Captain James Sinclair and Mr. Higgins, the butler. Miss Fairfax, pale and untidy, clutched her arm and gasped, breaking the silence. Mademoiselle Poirot moved quickly to her side, gripping the desk for support. Her voice was trembling as she screamed, fought, and fled. Her eyes were wide with fear, and tears threatened to fall. Poirot's gaze sharpened, sweeping the library with clinical precision. "Did you see their face? Mademoiselle, is there any mark to identify them?" She shook her head, her breath tightening. It was too dark, only a strong and swift shadow. I imagine she faltered and swallowed hard, thinking they were trying to silence me. Captain Sinclair came forward, grimacing and clenching his fists. "We must search the manor immediately. The devil cannot have gone far in this storm." Poirot calmly raised his hand, stating that a search for the killer would be futile due to the abundance of hiding places in the storm and manor's labyrinth. He asked Miss Fairfax to tell him everything from her entry, which she did with a shudder. Poirot went around the room, scrutinizing every detail. He paused at the misaligned bookshelf and traced its edge, but it did not reveal any secrets. He crouched near the desk and noticed a torn scrap of dark wool on the floor. He lifted it with a gloved hand and held it to the flickering light, his mustache twitching thoughtfully. "Is this from the attacker's clothing?" Miss Fairfax nodded slightly and whispered, "I clawed it then, it could be mine tore it." Poirot slid the fabric into his pocket. His mind raced as he realized the attack was not a random act, but rather a deliberate hit by a killer anxious to safeguard their secret. Miss Fairfax's sighting near the boathouse posed a threat to the murderer's concealment, prompting him to turn to others. This incident highlights the danger of a ruthless killer. Captain Sinclair suggested accompanying Mademoiselle Fairfax to her chamber to ensure her safety. Sinclair offered his arm to the scared journalist, who accepted it gratefully as they departed. Mr. Higgins expressed concern and said, "Should I fetch Dr. Campbell, sir?" Poirot responded, "No, let her rest and we will speak more tomorrow." The butler left Poirot alone in the library, the storm's distant roar a haunting backdrop. He stood motionless, the scrap of wool a tangible link to the unseen assailant. The attack had shifted the investigation's tenor. The killer's composure was fraying under the weight of their crime, but desperation made them perilous. A cornered beast ready to strike again, Poirot remained alone in the library. The faint glimmer of gas lamps cast an uncertain light on the shelves where shadows appeared to move and whisper. His fingers stroked the remnant of wool within his pocket, a silent testimony to the violence that had shattered the room's silence. His gaze shifted from the misplaced bookcase to the desk, where Miss Fairfax's horror had left an indelible trace. The storm rumbled through the solitude, reminding him of the chaos beyond and inside. He took a deliberate step toward the door, feeling the weight of invisible observers on him. The night ahead was vast and hazardous, and the house kept its secrets close, challenging him to pry them free. In Chapter 7 of The Boathouse Clue. The tempest's wrath surrounded St. Kilda's Rock, with gales screeching through the night as if the souls of the isle cried in pain outside. The thick walls of Dunraven Manor and the sea, the cliffs erupted with a relentless roar, trapping the household in a natural cage. Poirot stood motionless by the drawing-room window, his keen gray eyes piercing the storm's tumult. The isolation of this Scottish retreat pressed upon him, a silent conspirator in the dark deeds that had unfolded amidst the clamor of wind and wave. One thought held his mind with singular insistence: the boathouse, a forsaken outpost where shadows might yet yield their secrets. With a measured gesture, he rang the bell. "I require old Tom's assistance. We must examine the boathouse." Higgins' eyes widened, darting towards the storm. "Sir, the way may be hazardous in this gale, but the truth will not wait for clear skies." Poirot responded by carefully fixing his outerwear. "Please fetch him." Old Tom shuffled in his dripping oilcloth coat, clutching his cap in gnarled hands. His eyes flickered with unease as he met Poirot's gaze. "You want the boathouse in this, sir?" he asked, his Scots burr thickened by disbelief. "Indeed," Poirot affirmed, adjusting his hat against the wind. "You saw a figure there during the storm. Nang's return may improve your memory." Old Tom nodded grudgingly, lowering his cap low. "I'll come, but watch your step. The cliffs are hungry tonight." The wind snatched their coats with predatory glee as they walked into the maelstrom. The approach to the boathouse was narrow and twisting along the cliff's edge. Poirot moved with surprising deftness, his patent leather shoes finding purchase where lesser men might falter, and his eyes scanning the ground for signs left by the mysterious figure. Old Tom led the way, his lantern swinging wildly, casting eerie shadows among the tangled hedges that flanked their route. The boathouse was a squat, weathered structure perched precariously at the water's edge. The wooden walls groaned under the winds, and the door rattled on its hinges as old Tom wrestled it open. Inside, The air was thick with the scent of salt-damp wood, and the faint tang of tar ropes hung in coils from pegs along the walls. A small rowboat rested on its side. The murky and congested interior was a shelter for secrets, with the hull shimmering in the lantern's light. Poirot's clinical gaze swept the room, missing nothing. He moved to a rough workbench in the corner, where tools lay scattered, including a hammer, coil of wire, and a pair of heavy shears with gleaming blades. His breath caught as he crouched beside them, his gloved fingers hovering over the shears, where a single coarse thread snagged in the hinge, its fibers unmistakable moндур. Tom scratched his chin and furrowed his forehead, unable to remember. The rain made everything blurry, but a man in a long dark coat ran quickly, as if being pursued by the devil. Poirot nodded and slipped the thread into his pocket with a slight smile. Tom's thread is a key to unlocking the shadows. Returning to the manor was challenging due to the storm and wind, making it difficult to retrace their steps. Poirot's discovery of the shears cutting the rope and thread led him to the killer's location. However, it was unclear who in the household had defied the storm to visit the boathouse in the drawing room. Poirot approached Captain James Sinclair. Beside the fire, his expression grim as he peered into the flames. "Captain," Poirot continued in a conversational tone, "you are a man accustomed to the elements. Did you perhaps venture to the boathouse yesterday?" Sinclair's eyes narrowed as his jaw tightened. "No, Mon Poirot. I was in the library, as I previously stated." "Why are you asking?" Pugh's smile was weak and disarming. A thread from the murder rope was discovered caught in shears. The killer prepared their weapon in that location. Sinclair's posture stiffened, but he held Poirot's gaze. He said, "You're barking up the wrong tree." His voice was gruff, and he remained silent after that. Poirot could not break through the silence of his chamber. Poirot sat at a simple table with a coarse thread from the boathouse and a scrap of fine wool torn from an unseen assailant's garb. The fragments spoke in whispers, one of nautical grit and the other of refined menace, hinting at a figure beyond the window. The storm raged unabated, reflecting the tension within the walls. Poirot's thoughts briefly shifted to a long dark coat that reflected the wearer's serenity. With a perfectly woven mask, the mystery was growing closer, but the final knot eluded him. He rose with a serene resolution and threw a final glimpse at the tempest's ferocity. Poirot understood that even the darkest night will eventually give way to the light of dawn. In Chapter 8, the killer is revealed. The storm's roar has faded to a distant murmur as dawn approaches Dunraven Manor. The drawing room is filled with unspoken dread as the suspects stand there, a tense tableau around the hearth, their faces etched with fear, defiance, or feigned calm. Poirot, despite his small stature, commanded the room with authority. "We stand on the precipice of truth," he said. "The threads of this dark tapestry are laid bare, and the one who wove them will be revealed." Poirot commanded silence as he examined the clues in his coat pocket. He extracted a weathered thread and held it aloft to catch the firelight's gleam. "I drew a nautical rope from a boathouse I visited. The air was damp and smelled of salt and decay. Rusty shears snagged on the workbench. During the storm, our groundskeeper, Old Tom, noticed a silhouette moving through the gale near the boathouse. Miss Fairfax also saw someone there before dinner, but no one ventured into the chaos to cut the rope." Captain Sinclair spoke up, breaking the silence. "Poirot, the boathouse is not locked, Old Tom Worthington." Poirot, who had a faint smile beneath his mustache, approached Dr. Campbell with his eyes narrowed. He compared the thread to every garment in the house, but it only matched Dr. Alistair Canby's coat due to its texture and muted hue. Campbell's jaw tightened as a chorus of gasps shattered the stillness. He maintained his rigid posture, hands clasped with forced calm. "Ridiculous," he said, his tone steady but laced with strain. "That thread could have brushed against me, anywhere caught on a sleeve in passing." Poirot shook his head and spoke softly. No, doctor, I have inspected each coat with the precision of a scientist, every seam, every fiber. This thread is woven into the very fabric of your garment. You who claimed solitary walks to the boathouse for reflection had the opportunity and means to prepare this rope next. Poirot produced a charred scrap of paper, its edges curling from flame, but its words were clear. Your betrayal will not stand. He held it high, his tone deepening with gravitas, and seconded the motive in the study's fireplace. I retrieved a letter that had been torched in panic, but was not completely consumed. It represents betrayal and wounding. Lord Dunraven became agitated and began to pace, clasping his hands behind him and taking measured steps. He dedicated himself to a noble cause. He shared with Dr. Campbell, a trusted board member, but it's possible that this altruism conceals a hidden secret. I've reviewed the ledgers. Masami's pages of figures are meticulously kept but have gaps. Funds vanished disguised with cunning, and Lord Dunraven, on the cusp of a grand donation, uncovered the theft. Mr. Worthington blanched his voice, trembling. I've had debts, yes, crushing ones, but I'd never stoop to stealing from a charity. Poirot pivoted. To him, his gaze piercing, your debts are no secret, Mr. Worthington, and they gnaw at you for a moment. I considered your desperation might have driven such an act, but these losses, he turned back to Campbell, producing a ledger page marked with red ink. They are subtle, systematic, the work of a mind accustomed to precision. Doctor, you had the access, the skill. These discrepancies traced to your stewardship, and that night Lord Dunraven confronted you with this very page, did he not? Campbell leaned forward, his spectacles glinting fiercely. This is baseless conjecture. Archibald trusted me. I serve that charity with honor. Trusted you? We. Poirot counted, his tone like chilled steel, until he could trust no longer. In his desk, I found a note. In his hand, I cannot ignore what I have discovered, demanding restitution or exposure for you. This spelled ruin, your finances, your standing, your career. You could not permit it. Poirot. His eyes drifted to Miss Fairfax, who shrank slightly. Her hazel gaze clouded with fear. Third, the attack on Mademoiselle Fairfax in the library. She saw a figure near the boathouse, a fleeting shape, and the killer feared her memory might sharpen into recognition. He approached her, his voice softening with a rare warmth. Mademoiselle, you described your excellent, strong, swift, yet marked by a subtle limp, a legacy of an old injury. I ask you now before us all to demonstrate what you felt. Show us how. He moved. Miss Fairfax hesitated, then rose, her hands trembling. As she took a step, she mimicked the assailant gait, a quick stride, then a falter, a slight drag of one leg. It was like this, she whispered in the dark. When he stumbled against the shelf, I felt it. Poirot nodded, turning to the room. And who among us carries such a mark, a scar of war? Dr. Campbell. He drew forth a scrap of dark wool, holding it beside the thread in her struggle. She tore this from her attacker, a perfect match to the doctor's coat, the same coat bearing the boathouse thread. Campbell shot to his feet, his composure fraying. This is madness. I was in my room that night. I'd no cause to harm her. Pouze, Veng's voice cut like a blade. But you did, doctor. She saw you near the boathouse, and your fear of exposure drove you to act the limp. The wool, these are no tricks of chance. The room seemed to hold its breath as Poirot advanced, his small frame towering with authority. And now the final thread throughout this affair. I have watched you, doctor, at dinner. Your hands shook as you lifted your glass, a tremor not of nerves but of need on your cuff. A faint stain of laudanum lingered, its medicinal tang unmistakable in the lamplight. Your pupils betrayed, you dilated beyond reason. These are the signs of a man bound to his secret, a morphine addiction born of your war wound, which has devoured your resources. A stunned silence broke into gasps, the revelation landing like a thunderbolt. Campbell's face drained to ash, his hands gripping his chair, as if to anchor himself. You have no proof, he stammered, his voice splintering. Poirot's faint, triumphant. But I do, doctor. Recall the night we played cards. Your hands faltered, and you excused yourself, a sheen of sweat on your brow. The stolen funds were not mere avarice. They fed this craving. Lord Dunraven's threat imperiled not just your name, but your very lifeline. You killed to protect it. Poirot paused, his gaze sweeping the room once more. Yet, madame, I confess I wavered. Could it have been Captain Sinclair, with his soldiers' strength and access to the boathouse? None. His coat bore no trace. And his honor, though stern, is intact. Or Miss Worthington, driven by debt? None again. His losses are too chaotic, not the work of a thief so precise. No, the little gray cells return always to you. Dr. Campbell. Campbell's voice rose ragged with desperation. You twist everything. I'm no murderer. I cared for Arkeld. Then why? Poirot pressed, relentless. Did you burn that letter? Why did you strike at Miss Fairfax? Why does every clue circle back to you? Campbell collapsed back into his chair, his spectacle slipping as his resolve shattered. Enough, he whispered, his voice a broken thread. It's true, all of it. The pain after the war. The morphine was my solace. I took from the charity. Small amounts at first to buy at Archibald. Found out he was furious. Said he'd expose me that night. I pleaded. But he turned his back. I went to the boathouse and the storm cut the rope. I didn't mean to plan it, but when I returned, and he scorned me again, I snapped. The confession hung in the air, a raw wound laid bare. Lady Elena's stare was arctic. Captain Sinclair's fists clenched, and Miss Fairfax pressed her notebook to her chest, eyes brimming with tears. Poirot turned to Mr. Higgins, his tone calm, yet resolute. Miss Higgins, please secure Dr. Campbell in a locked room until the constable arrives. The study, with its sturdy bolt, will serve. Captain Sinclair, your discipline is needed. Stand guard. Higgins nodded, pale but determined. Right away. See, Poirot. He gestured for Campbell to rise, and the doctor complied. His frame slumped in defeat. Sinclair squared his shoulders, his voice firm. He won't stir an inch under my watch. Mercy, Pooh said. And see Higgins provide food and water, nothing more. He is no longer a guest, but a prisoner. As Campbell was led away, his footsteps echoing heavily, the room seemed to exhale, the immediate danger quelled. Though the night's weight lingered in the quiet that followed, Poirot observed Lady Eleanor's subtle adjustment of her shawl, her fingers betraying a faint tremble. Captain Sinclair, standing by the door, allowed his gaze to rest on her for a heartbeat longer than propriety allowed. A silent communication passing between them before he averted his eyes, his posture stiffening. Mr. Higgins returned shortly, his voice steady despite a faint quiver. The constable will come when the storm lifts. Zur Poirot, oui. Poirot replied, gazing at the window where dawn's light pierced the gloom as the last echoes of footsteps faded. Poirot remained, his gaze lingering on the fire's dying embers. The manor seemed to sigh, its secrets exhumed its shadows. Retreating with the storm, he turned to the window where the first rays of dawn pierced the gloom, a quiet harbinger of the justice to come. With a final measured glance at the room, he stepped into the corridor, the soft click of his heels a steady rhythm against the silence. The night had yielded its truths, but Hercule knew that the human heart held mysteries yet unsolved. Chapter 9. The Dawn of Truth. After the storm above St. Kilda's rock subsided, a peaceful morning dawned over the Scottish Isle, with golden rays cutting through the mists. Dunraven Manor was visible. The Gothic silhouette on the cliffs is softened by the gentle light, and the ivy clings to the ancient stones, as if hesitant to reveal its secrets. The sea below whispered a subdued echo of its former fury, while within the manor's shadowed halls, the tumult of suspicion had subsided into an oppressive stillness. Hercule Poirot stood at the drawing-room window, his dim form framed against the vastness beyond his gray eyes. The murder of Lord Archibald Dunraven was solved with a theatrical grace, with Dr. Alistair Campbell unmasked as the culprit. His confession was a grim tale of greed, twisted by morphine's cruel grip. In this quiet aftermath, Poirot felt the weight of truths uncovered, the air thick with the somber dignity of justice. "Monsieur Poirot," he replied, his voice firm despite the strain of recent days. "The constable has taken Dr. Campbell into custody. The boat from the mainland bore him away at first light." Pooh nodded, satisfied that justice had been set in motion. "Mr. Higgins, the law will now take its course." Higgins expressed gratitude for the clarity that prevented further darkness in the house. Poirot's mustache twitched, indicating acknowledgement and humility. The truth deserves service. Mon ami net. Me, but I am glad for your support since the butler departed. Poirot's gaze was drawn to Lady Evelina Dunraven, who stood at the foot of the grand staircase in a black silk gown with pinned hair and emerald eyes. Despite being innocent of her husband's murder, the investigation revealed her clandestine affair with Captain James Sinclair, which tarnished her standing and severed her ties to the manor's legacy. Poirot approached with a respectful bow and said, "Madame, you prepare to depart." Her lips twisted into a harsh smile, but there was no hatred behind it. "Miss Upro, this house no longer provides me with richness or warmth. My mistakes, while not murderous, have cost me dearly. I will seek a new road away from these cliffs." Poirot observed her calm and tenacity in the face of hardship. She ascended the staircase with measured grace, acknowledging that the future is an unpainted canvas that may provide the freedom she seeks. Poirot turned away from her silhouette in the upper hall, shifting his focus to Captain Sinclair, who lingered in the dining room with a stern face and a mask of introspection. Despite his gambling debts and old grudges, the captain's innocence in the murder left him grappling with his own burdens and his connection to Lady Eleanor, a wound yet to heal. Miss Clara Fairfax emerged from the library, her notebook tucked under her arm. Poirot's smile was sweet, and his tone was both compassionate and warning. "Mademoiselle, the truth is powerful, but it must be used with respect for those it affects." She nodded with conviction, thanking Poirot for saving her that night. Poirot dismissed her appreciation with a wave of his hand, stating that it was his role to let your words illuminate without injuring. Miss Fairfax disappeared. Poirot's attention was drawn to Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, who stood by the entrance hall, their faces heavy with secrets. Mr. Worthington's illicit antiquities dealings were discovered. Despite being unrelated to the crime, Mrs. Beatrice's nervous demeanor softened with relief as she clung to his arm, casting a shadow on his faltering business. Their affair was a private burden they would carry forward. Madame Poirot approached Mr. Worthington, who nodded subduedly. Mrs. Beatrix's eyes met Poirot's, and there was a flicker of gratitude within them. "Thank you for your discretion," she whispered. Poirot bowed slightly, his expression neutral. The truth serves justice rather than judgment. Poirot's thoughts turned to the manor, a grand edifice haunted by its secrets now laid bare. The study's ancient carvings, a silent witness to the human drama that had unfolded, would remain a treasure untouched by the tragedy. Mr. Higgins reappeared with Poirot's hat and cane, with the calm deference of someone who had braved the storm alongside him. "Your boat is ready. Mr. Poirot," he said quietly, "Raven Manor owes you a debt that cannot be repaid." Poirot adjusted his hat with fastidious precision, his small hands deft and deliberate. "Nor, Monsieur Higgins, it is not I who claim such debts, but the order of things restored. Let this house stand as a caution of passions unchecked and truths concealed." He stepped into the crisp air, the sun now a radiant presence above the cliffs, its light dancing upon the waves that lapped gently at the shore. The Rolls-Royce Phantom, stranded by the storm's caprice, stood silent as a monum. Poirot approached the motorboat, its engine softly purring. As it glided away from St. Kilda's Rock, Poirot turned to see Dunraven Manor, its spires etched against the sky like sentinels of a tale. The darkness that had shrouded it had lifted, and Dr. Campbell's treachery now bore the weight of justice. In the stillness, Poirot mused on the eternal riddle of humanity, the frailties that fester beneath decorum, and the secrets that simmer until they boil over the island. Chapter 10 closed as Hercule Poirot, ever the guardian of truth, sailed forth, his mind filled with the promise of mysteries yet unraveled. And so when dawn's soft light breaks the storm-weary skies of St. Kilda's Rock, Dunraven Manor loses its veil of shadows, and the truth is revealed. Hercule Poirot's intellect revealed Dr. Alastair Campbell as the murderer of Lord Archibald Dunraven. The evidence included a thread from a nautical rope, a charred shred of a spiteful letter, and a slight fragrance of laudanum. Poirot's story of betrayal. An addiction reveals the killer's need for secrecy, fueled by pilfered charity funds. As the constable takes him away, the manor's relic stands as a silent witness to the frailties of the human soul. If this story has piqued your interest, consider subscribing to Nocturnal Tales for more. Please share your opinions below. Did Poirot's little gray cells confirm your suspicions? To support our storytelling, visit our Buy Me a Coffee page link in the description until our next encounter. Good night, keep your lanterns light and your wits keen.